This is Aaron from Aaron's Audio Corner, and today I'm going to be reviewing the JBL 305P MkII. It's this speaker. Yeah, that's it. That's the back of it. Oh, let me get my head out. Cool. So I'm trying something different rather than creating a video and having to go through the trouble of editing it. I don't have a lot of time to do that for everything that I review. So I'm going to try to do this live. And then that way, as I go through the data, the results, and talk about what I heard and what the data, is telling me, then you are free to ask questions as I go along. But just one thing to note is when I have my screen up showing the results, I may not see any questions that are coming through. So just be patient, and it may take until I get through to the end if I forget to check part way through until I see your questions. So, like I say, just be patient with me there. I just reviewed the speaker, just finished reviewing it. I guess actually today, to be honest, I did my last listening session with it, and it's what, $300 or so a pair. I'll throw a B&H photo affiliate link. So if you like the data, if you like the speaker, you want to support the channel, I ask you kindly to please use the affiliate link to purchase the speaker through. It doesn't necessarily get me a lot of money. I think it's like 2 to 4% total is what I get on the purchase price, but it doesn't cost you anything extra. And that, overall helps me in the long run of helping to pay off the near field scanner and then just whatever else I'm doing. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and dive into this data. So bear with me while I try to remember how to work this this whole setup here. And I got to get my website up first. Doom, 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 doom. Doom, 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 doom. Listen, Tina Turner's Private Dancer. If you guys have not heard that, you really should listen to it because the mid bass on that track, I'm serious now, the mid bass on that track is legit. I mean, it's got a strong kick drum that comes through at the beginning and stays through maybe about like the first 30 seconds of it, and it will rock your world. So again, Tina Turner's Private Dancer. Go check that track out if you want a good track with good mid bass, good solid chest pumping mid bass. All righty, share screen and Chrome tab. Well, loading, show on stream. All right, can you guys see the image I've got over here of the JBL speaker? Please let me know if you can or if you cannot. I am showing it right now. I'll blow it up a little bit more. And I will wait. Yes, you can see it. Perfect. All right. So let's get through to reviewing the speaker. This speaker, as I said, is a $300 set of bookshelf size studio monitors. It features a 5-inch mid-woofer and a 1-inch dome tweeter in a waveguide that is pretty nice. You've got a rear port on the back, thus me saying rear port, and the typical labels here. I'll blow this up just a little bit more if I can. Okay. You've got an XLR balanced input and then the TRS 1/4-inch input jack. It's got an input sensitivity switch so you can set the gain appropriately. And as far as hiss goes, because somebody did ask me that over on Audio Science Review, I didn't hear any hiss. I wasn't necessarily intentionally listening for it with this speaker, but I was listening to the speaker in the near field a couple times. And at one point, I was about maybe 2 feet or so away from the speaker in between tracks. I never heard any kind of hiss. So if I were intentionally listening for it, maybe it's there, but I can just tell you that casually listening through the speakers, I didn't notice anything. So I would say you're a go as far as hiss is concerned. You've got a volume knob on the back, so that will allow you to, once you set the input sensitivity switch wherever you like it, you can dial in the volume to get it to where you want. So you've got a left speaker a little bit further than your right speaker, and that's not ideal. Dial up the volume a little bit to get them centered up between you. You've got a high frequency trim to shelf. It allows you to go plus 2 dB or negative 2 dB if you don't use the default. When the default is 0, I would recommend at least the 0, if not the negative 2. Don't do the plus 2 dB. If you do the 2 or the plus 2 dB, oh my gosh, if you do the plus 2 dB, that's tough, and you like it, then that probably means you're going deaf, and go see your local audiologist ASAP. The boundary EQ, which is just a low shelf, I believe, for the mid bass region, You can also set that to, what is this? Minus 1.5 and minus 3 dB, or 0 dB, which is the default, which is where I left it. And then you just got the plug and a power switch on the back. Here's a B&H photo, just dropping that again. And then the review that I'm doing right now, the video, will be posted right here later on. And let's go through here. So the information and photos, this is just stuff that I basically pulled off the website from the manufacturer. Let's see. They say next generation power studio monitor makes legendary JBL performance available to every studio. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just marketing talk. Personally, I don't care. The only reason I provide it is just as a point of reference. So sometimes you can see if a manufacturer is maybe being shady, if you want to call it that. And I restate the MSRP, $300 USD a pair. And then here are some specifications from the manual. And I guess the interesting note here is the crossover is 1725 fourth order, which 1725 is actually kind of low for a 1-inch dome tweeter. Even though it is horn loaded, it's mildly recessed in the horn. I'm ballparking this to be maybe about, I don't know, an inch deep, I guess. I have no idea. So yeah, even though when you horn load a tweeter, you can cross over a little bit lower. In this case, if somebody were telling me it was crossed this low, I'd be surprised. But the fourth order LR slope definitely helps mitigate any kind of thermal issues that you would have with the tweeter. And then also on the high end of the mid woofer, it will cut off, the kind of breakups and stuff that you typically see with a, well, I don't even know what kind of material this is, but with any kind of speaker, cloth, let's see, paper, aluminum, whatever. They're all going to have a breakup point somewhere, but the fourth order slope helps that. And then we've got other specs that I'm just like, okay, max continuous SPL. I don't even know what that SPL at where. SPL at 1 meter is a lot different than SPL at 3 meters. Same thing, max peak SPL. Where? At where? I mean, is this anechoic? What the crap, people? Tell me what that means when you give me a spec. Okay, love you, thank you. More pictures. Let's just turn the speaker sideways because I figured I needed at least one more picture to look legitimate. The CTA 2034 spinorama and accompanying data set. This is what everybody is here to see. This is what you really, I guess, are paying attention to when you go to my website and you read the review. And this is just, telling you what this is, and how I obtain the data is using Klippel's near field scanner, which is a state-of-the-art measurement device that will allow you to measure a speaker fully anechoic in a non-anechoic environment. And by that, I mean like my garage. And this is the exact setup. This is the speaker, and this is the near field scanner. I have the R-axis attachment in case anybody out there is wondering, because you can see I've got the extra bolts right here, but I don't have the Z-axis attachment. So I can still actually test floor standing speakers. I just have to lay them on their side and change the reference orientation. Pretty cool. If you are interested in learning a little bit more about the near field scanner, you can go and check out the interview that I did with Christian Bellman, who was one of the designers who worked on the near field scanner. And in fact, I believe it was his master's thesis was written on the, I guess, the science that the near field scanner is based upon, which is holography. And it's measuring a speaker in the near field and basically being able to back out a far field sound radiation pattern. So it's really cool stuff. Talking to that dude, man, he's just, when you talk to somebody who's just like on another level, that dude's on another level. Let's see here. I'm going to take a small break and get me some water here. Check the chat. Is everybody doing all right over here? Hold on. His is 150, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm looking at the chat just to make sure everything's going all right. Thermal issues. Is this a computer? Thermal issues. That's funny. Sorry, guys. Just give me 1 minute. I'm making sure that I'm not missing anything important here. Like, hey, your mic went out. And it looks like everything is okay. So I'm going to keep marching on. Okay, the reference plane in this test is at the tweeter. XLR input plus 10 dBV, and the port open, not stuff. Now, if you're wondering why I'm even telling you about the port being open, it's because a lot of ports just suck and they cause resonance. And I have tested speakers both with the port open and with the port sealed off. And so I want to make that delineation when I do one or the other, just so you know absolutely, yes, this is how it was tested. Measurements are provided in a format in accordance with the standard method of measurement for in-home loudspeakers. Woo-wee, that's a sentence. But if you want to see what that actually means, you will click this link. It will bring you to a site where you can download the CTA 2034 specification for free. And it provides you with all the background information about how they came to determine how to measure a speaker, and then how you can actually measure a speaker in the same standard yourself. This actually, it's really interesting. So if you're interested in trying to do this on your own, you can either feel free to contact me and I will put you in touch with the right people, or you can check this link, or I can give you some other links and information. Now, onto the data. So this block of data right here, this graphic, is the spinorama data. And if you're curious about what each individual line means, you can click this little down button, and that's it. It will tell you. For example, the on-axis frequency response is the universal starting point in many situations and a fair representation of the first sound to arrive at a listener's ears. Okay, the on-axis, that's this black line. So you follow the black line through there. And again, you can just go through and see what the rest of the definitions are for the other data. Typically, when I look at this graphic, I really just focus on the on-axis response, and then I jump to the early reflections directivity index. And that's what I'm going to talk about right now to kind of shorten this thing up. Otherwise, I'll be here for way, way too long. Okay. When I say K like that, it always makes me think of Office Space, because like, I'm going to need you to come in on Sunday. Okay. All right. So looking at the on-axis response, I'm going to work my way from the low frequency to the high frequency. Starting at the low frequency, you can see that the response has a knee and a cutoff at around, what is this, 20, 30, 40, 50, around 60 to 50 hertz, somewhere in that ballpark. It's mildly flat. I'd say flat, basically until about 150 hertz, where it starts to have a little bit of a recess going down into the mid-range area. So it's got a slight scoop to the mid-range area. Now, I do know people that say they like that sound. I want a flat, dead flat on axis frequency response. That's what the ideal response is, because it is as simple as in equals out. Whatever I'm providing in, I need to come out. Any deviation from that is not a true representation of what is being played on the recording. And if you want to disagree with me, you're welcome to. You're wrong. If you want to talk about preference versus reference, that's a separate topic altogether. But if you prefer a different sound, that's fine. I'm just telling you what I'm looking for in this data and what I generally prefer. If you're kind of looking against this flat line, like I'm going to draw an imaginary flat line through here, the main thing that stands out is this peak in the 1.6 kilohertz region or so. Now that's actually due to, at least what I believe is due to port resonance. And I'll show you some evidence for that a little bit later. But, kind of going through here, for the most part, it looks pretty flat. Now, there is a little bit of a treble boost here. And if I had a ballpark that, I'd say it's about 1 or 2 dB, give or take, compared to the mid range. But the thing that is worth noting here, because it really affected what I heard and when I was doing my listening tests, is this dip right there. Now, normally you wouldn't. Let me go ahead and back up. Most people who are reviewing speakers, when they test them, especially in a room, you're not going to see that. And if you do, you're going to think it's because of the room, and you'd probably be right more often than not. But most people that are measuring outside of an anechoic chamber or outside of using the Klippel near field scanner are going to do quasi-anechoic measurements, which means that it's going to be a gated response, which means that down to a certain frequency, the response is valid, but below that frequency, the response is invalid. Most quasi-anechoic measurements are done to about 3 milliseconds, which is about 300 hertz. It's like 333 hertz. And that means that you have a valid data point every 3 milliseconds, or roughly every 300 seconds. So you can imagine that if I'm telling you that you have a valid data point at 300 hertz and then 600 hertz, that if there's something between 300 hertz and 600 hertz, it's probably not going to show up. And it's even more troublesome to get accurate response below, 1 kilohertz when you're talking gated response, and especially down into the mid bass region and the sub bass region, unless you do an outdoor ground plane measurement, which is an alternative. Now, I'll say all that to say, most likely other people's measurements won't show this. And the reason I'm keying in on this is because this showed up as a resonance in my listening test, and it showed up in many, many songs, and would be the reason for me not to purchase these speakers on this alone. It seems nitpicky, but with all the music that I listen to, it has guitar, chords at a particular frequency that seems to hit that resonance, and just other effects in the music, especially like 80s synth pop that I love. I love me some 80s synth pop. it tends to have tones that will hit certain frequencies. And if it hits the right one, and by the right one, I mean the wrong one, and hits a resonance, then the enclosure lights up and that's all you hear. It just masks everything else. And that sucks. So for that reason alone, I wouldn't buy these speakers, but you have to keep in mind they're $300 for a pair. And if you're on a budget, then maybe you could ignore it, but it would drive me nuts and I wouldn't be able to use them. Going past that, then we could talk about the mid-range scoop. Do you like it? Yes or no? But these are studio monitors, so this should be flat. This right here, this should be flat. These are studio monitors. All this should be flat because they're studio monitors. And again, you go back to, but they're $300 a pair, Aaron. Okay, I get it. I totally get it. For $300 a pair, they're not bad. But if you're like me and you key in on this mid-bass resonance, you're going to drive yourself insane. And this 1.6 kilohertz region, that lit up a few times with certain notes. John Mayer's Free Fallin', he said, she's a good girl. And I'm not going to sing because I can't sing, but she is a good girl. It just lights up and it distracts from the enjoyment of the music. And I think if you're listening to them for just enjoyment factor as in passing, absolutely it's fine. Or if you just want some big monitor sitting on your desk, that's fine. But if you're really trying to critique a playback system and you're using these, I think you're going to run into some issues. I think most people are probably going to run into an issue with this. And most people may not run into an issue down here. But if you're like me, then you might. So keep that in mind. Let's see here. Any kind of notes? Oh, goodness. You guys are going to have to slow up on me. It's going to give me a lot to talk about when I get done. Okay, so that's the on-axis response. Now, the next thing you could look at is the listening window. Now, listening window is an average of 30 degrees to the side and 10 degrees up and down from the speaker. And generally what you want is a dash green line, a listening window that is similar, in line to the on-axis response. And any deviation from that means that very short within the angle of the speaker, it's already kind of going crazy. And if you see a lot of deviation in the listening window compared to the on-axis response, then you could probably just stop looking at the data and go on to the next speaker and throw that one out. In this case, the listening window matches the on-axis response pretty well. I mean, it's doing kind of what I expect it to do, and it's tracking quite well. And you notice there are some on-axis dips in their response, and the listening window kind of smooths right over those. So those are kind of good characteristics, I guess, of a listening window. But the thing that I want to focus on is the early reflections DI. And that is this bottom window or this bottom blue graphic down here. What this is a relationship of the early reflections, this dash blue line, versus the listening window. And it's just, one divided by the other, one minus the other, some math like that. But basically, it's telling you the directivity of the speaker in the frontal hemisphere. Mostly there is a rear wall bounce, I believe, taken into effect, but for the most part, you're talking about what's firing forward of the speaker. And that's the area that I'm really interested in. Now, generally speaking, when you talk about directivity, the easiest way to think about this is a flat line down here, a directivity index of 0 dB would be a fully omnidirectional speaker. Everything, no matter where you are, above, below, to the side, underneath, whatever, is the exact same as it is somewhere else. So on axis versus right behind the speaker is the exact same sound. That would be a fully omnidirectional speaker. That would be a 0 dB directivity index speaker. When you are talking about the other extreme, which would be a speaker that is beaming, it's pointing, most of its directionality, is pointing right at you. So all the tweeter usually is always a beaming point. That would be up here in directivity. It would be like plus 10 dB or something like that. And I believe the number I heard, and I'll need to verify this, but I believe the number I heard is that for every 6 dB in directivity, that is 90 degrees. So I'll need to double check that. I've actually tried to find that again, and I can't recall for the life of me where I saw that. So if one of you guys in the chat knows that somewhere, please leave me a message or send me a message or something to let me know where that is, because I would love to find that in a book. Moving on. So you have the two extremes. You have a flat DI, which is 0, and then you have a ramping up DI, which means that the speaker, as it goes, let's hit the mic, the speaker, as it goes from omnidirectional to forward beaming, is starting to increase in directivity. There is no perfect directivity. A lot of it comes down to listener preference as well as room. And that's kind of a different topic. I really don't want to get into that right now and get sidetracked. So what I'll just say is generally what I do is I draw an imaginary line from about 200 or 300 hertz on the dash blue up to its 10 kilohertz point. And so that gives me an idea of, what's going on with directivity. Is it narrowing up uniformly, or is it narrowing up and then kind of getting wide again and then narrowing up? Is it doing, changing through the directivity and the radiation pattern? So if we were to do that, we could kind of see that, yeah, there's some funkiness going on. Again, if you're looking at this 1.6 kilohertz region, it deviates from what I would consider, a line through here. And then you got some other things going on. So to explain that, what's happening is as the speaker is playing low frequencies, it's playing omnidirectional, so all the way around it. And as it starts playing higher frequencies, it's becoming more directional, radiating frontward. And we see that as this dash blue line is increasing in slope, and then it's increasing more and more as that woofer starts to beam. And now we bring in the tweeter at the crossover region, and now you're going a little bit more omnidirectional. I mean, you're not completely omnidirectional, but your directivity drops back down again. So that means that the tweeter, being omnidirectional, is firing a little bit toward the back as well as toward the front, as instead of completely toward the front. So we go to more narrow directivity and then wide again, and we stay pretty wide until we get to the higher frequencies. If you're curious what I think about this, well, I think that this isn't great, but I definitely have seen much worse. So it's not bad. And it shouldn't be, really, because it's a 5-inch woofer mated to a 1-inch tweeter in a waveguide crossed at 1725. A 5-inch woofer would beam somewhere around 1500 hertz. So they shouldn't have any issue matching a tweeter up to it if the crossover is 1725. Take that for what it's worth. This is the early reflections breakout. And I got to be honest, I don't get a lot of useful information out of this. I know, some people will look at it and they'll say, oh, well, I'm looking at the ceiling bounce line, and this is telling me there's a ceiling bounce at around 1.6 kilohertz. So that means I need to absorb that. Well, dude, if you absorb 1.6, you're absorbing everything else above it at least, and you're probably absorbing stuff below it, but you're definitely absorbing everything above it. Do you want that? Does that matter? I don't know. And I still don't know that vertical reflections are that big of a deal. Um, I'm just not there yet. Now, with horizontal reflections, I like them. You get the apparent source width, you get the lateral reflections off the walls, and it provides you with more sense of wideness in the soundstage. And that's kind of cool. But as far as vertical goes, I don't know. I mean, unless we start talking about height of the soundstage, then that may be a separate topic. But I've only run into that in one instance where I had a speaker that was definitely beaming before it integrated with the tweeter, and you could hear the speaker, like the midwoofer, playing notes out of sync or out of phase with the tweeter. Estimated in-room response. This is a very, very useful graphic, and I personally feel like a lot of people gloss over it. So if you are, a believer in data, and you enjoy having data to help you understand what's going on with the speaker, if I had to point to one piece of data, I almost would say that this might be the most important. I'm putting myself out on a limb here. But the reason I say that is because if I can tell you within reasonable accuracy how a speaker is going to behave in your room, and you kind of understand what response you like, then why wouldn't you want to know that? It takes the guesswork out of having to go out and try and buying multiple speakers. Now you can say, hey, I've narrowed it down to these 3 because they all had the same, tonal response that I generally find I like. I'm going to buy these 3 and choose between them and send the other 2 back. Right. That's what a good shopper, I guess, would do. If you've done your research, this is what you're paying attention to. In terms of what you should get with this line, this also varies in accordance with what you prefer. But generally speaking, a negative 1 dB per octave slope is regarded as good. And that would kind of be, from 300 hertz to what down here at 20 kilohertz would be about a 7 dB, maybe 6 dB drop. Somebody could do that math and verify for me. So if I'm just going to draw a blank line here, I'm going to do like this. And then, what's going on at 1.6? It's above my blank line. What's going on with the high frequency? It's all above my blank line. Now, this should be considered as, this is a far field response. And with monitors like these, you're going to be listening near field. So you do kind of expect to have a little bit more of an elevated treble. But this is bright to me. I won't necessarily say this is fatiguing, because this isn't bad as some I've seen. But actually, I guess I would say it could be fatiguing. If you're talking extended periods of time mixing and mastering speakers, this plus 2 dB or whatever they got going on could get old fast. So I would recommend you use the negative 2 dB switch for the high frequency shelf if you're going to use these speakers for extended periods of time, certainly. If you want to give yourself a false sense of pseudo detail, leave it the way it is. If your hearing is terrible on the high frequencies, bump it up plus 2 dB. But otherwise, I would say make it minus 2 dB, and that should help in this region. Now, SPL horizontal response. This is another fun one. This all feeds into the other data we've looked at. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this stuff because it's somewhat rehashing the same thing. But the thing that you're looking for here is good off-axis response versus the on-axis response. And for the most part, it looks pretty good, except you got some bunching up going on right here. And that is typically indicative of a resonance. And in this case, it is the port resonance. And then you've got some other things kind of going on down here, which I know are issues as well, although I don't know exactly what's causing them. I believe it's probably standing waves in the cabinet, could be something else, but I definitely heard them as resonances. Oh, and going back to this, another thing that I kind of look at here is what's going on off axis is determine, where do you need to sit? Toe in, right? And if you're talking about toe in, I would actually say that, out to 30 degrees looks like it's reasonably flat on the high end. And it helps to smooth this peak right here. So you could possibly try out to 30-degree toe in, toe out and see what you think. I'm not saying it's going to be the best, but it might work. Vertical response. Let's take the same approach here. How do I need to aim these speakers? How do I need to listen to them? This data is telling me that on axis, off axis trends pretty well out to about 10 degrees. 20 degrees is the orange, and it's somewhat hard to see here. And the orange isn't that bad, but it's definitely not as good as the 10 degrees. And the dash line actually looks like it might be better. I think overall the dash line. So negative 10 degrees from the tweeter line looks like it might work the best if you're going to be off axis. Now, this is a whole bunch of plots that are interesting for people, but they don't really do much for me. I mean, I know what they are, but I'd rather look at something else. So we'll continue on and come back to this later. On-axis linearity, this is where I take the mean SPL from 300 hertz to 3 kilohertz, and I calculate a mean. And then I see what the plus minus 1.5 dB region and the plus minus 3 dB region is. And you can see that overlaid here. The 1.5 is gray. And if a speaker is within 1.5 dB, it's awesome. If a speaker is within 3 dB, it's pretty good. When a speaker gets outside of that, that's when you start, having more issues with the timbre. And we can see again, this peak right here at the 1.6, that annoys the crap out of me. And then if you look at the mean, you can really see how the high frequency treble is above this mean line by about, 1.5 dB. So yeah, it stands out a little bit. And like I said, it's not terribly aggravating, but it will kind of get on your nerves after a while. Glow plots. Now, this is what I like looking at. This is the horizontal radiation of the speaker looking from bird's eye view down. And the things that I look for here, the red. Where is the red? Because that's where the high SPL content is. And it kind of gives me an idea of, what the response is in the radiation pattern. So if I'm looking at the red, the majority of the red is within plus or minus 70 degrees. So let me back up real fast. 0 degrees is in front of the speaker. And then this is the back of the speaker. And this is the sides of the speaker. Okay. So again, we're top down, bird's eye view on the speaker. So we're saying that the speaker is firing out at about 70 degrees left and right until you get to the 13 kilohertz mark, and then it starts to drop pretty significantly, and that's just a waveguide effect, I believe. A couple other things to note here. This red, you notice how there's a gap as you go behind the speaker in SPL. This green is low SPL, and this green is low SPL. But then you got red and orange and yellow. Hello, port resonance. So in the low frequencies, you're omnidirectional, and I understand that. I'm fine with that. But in the higher frequencies, this should be like yellow, maybe even green. It should not be red. And when it's red behind the speaker, we know we got a port back there. So I can look and say, that's the port. That's the port resonance. So yeah, for what that's worth. And then this is kind of the same thing. We're looking at the speaker's vertical response and vertical radiation pattern. So now we're looking at the side of the speaker. You're standing to the side, you're looking at it, and the 0 degree line right here is forward. The 180 is back of the speaker, and then this is the top of the speaker up here, and this is the bottom of the speaker down here. And let's see, the radiation pattern. Well, you can see that there's kind of a suck out right through here. This is a crossover region. Then you got a strong on-axis response going on right here because it's darker red than the rest of the red. And let's say, just in general, let's look at plus 30 degrees is okay. Minus 20 degrees is okay, you know, for the majority of the music, but these areas are really starting to encroach upon the response when you start talking about the vertical response. So again, I'm going back to stay on axis or stay within 10 degrees below the tweeter line. Okay, harmonic distortion. Okay, harmonic distortion at 96 dB, above 3% THD. It's almost, yeah, it's all second order. And if you watch my recent discussion with, gosh, I just forgot, Earl Geddes, there we go. You can see that, you know, through his research, he's talked about how low orders of distortion are, I don't want to say inaudible, but much more inaudible than we think they are. And the high orders of distortion are the ones that we were really concerned with. So if we're looking at high order distortion, those are all low. Um, Overall, uh, this doesn't really mean jack to me. I gotta be honest with you. I'm not saying anything. If I saw something out here where, like, you know, fifth order distortion was just peaking high, then yeah, we probably got a buzz or something like that going on. But I'm not really too concerned with this at this very moment. However, it is worth noting that if you look at the fourth and fifth, see how they're kind of lighting up around that 200 hertz region, that 225. Kind of wonder if that's a sign of internal resonance, cabinet resonance. So that's something I'm going to try to pay attention to in future reviews. Now, the near field response. This is where I take the microphone and put it right next to the drive unit and the ports if there are any. And in this case, you can see the mid woofer, you know, okay, tweeter, okay, and I'm not really seeing much to complain about. The port in black, yeah, doing its job. Now, we got some standouts here at 600 hertz, then again around 800 hertz. And then we got this big bad boy around 1.5 kilohertz or so. Now, this is what's causing all of the issues that we saw in terms of the backward radiation, like back here. That's all that high SPL. That's all your port resonance. And that's not a good thing. You don't want that, because that does mess with your response. You know, we talked about, let me roll back up here. The on axis response, that's from the port. I mean, to some degree, this stuff is from the port. It may not be this, it may be this, and maybe this is just horn loading. I'm not 100% sure. But the reason this is going crazy is due to the port. So keep going. Now, this is the fun stuff. I do a couple different sets of compression measurements. And when I do compression measurements, the things that I'm looking for are instantaneous compression. And what do I mean by that? I mean like compression. Compression is if I turn the volume up 10 dB, I expect to get 10 dB, but instead I get 5 dB. That means I lose 5 dB of output because there was compression, either thermal compression. Sometimes there's limiting in an amplifier, built-in amplifiers, and that's something we're going to see here. But compression is not good because you're losing output that you should have been getting. And the reason I do an instantaneous is because I try to relate this to what we talk about in terms of, is a speaker dynamic? And, you know, if a speaker, you know, has dynamic range, it has the ability to go from soft music to loud music instantaneously without clipping. I'm gonna say clipping. Speakers don't clip, but I think that's a good way to put it. So we're going to pretend like speakers clip for this discussion. And so for this testing, what I did was I set the microphone at about the equivalent of 1 meter, and I did 76 dB at 1 meter. And then I do 86, 96, and 102 dB at 1 meter. And I compare those three ladder versus the 76 dB. And if I don't get the gain that I expected to get, then that is compression. So let's start with the easy example first. 76 dB versus 86 dB is 10 dB. So I expect to get 10 dB. And what I'm plotting here is what I get in terms of actual loss of output. So I expected to get 10 dB, but this red line is tracking behind the blue line, is showing me that it's actually about a quarter of a dB off. So I'm losing a quarter of a dB due to some kind of compression or limiting, something along those lines. And then the same thing for 96 dB. And actually these numbers look pretty decent. I mean, they're not great, but for a speaker this size at 96 dB, that's pretty good. You're losing less than half a dB in output, cranking it 20 dB from 76 to 96. So that's really not bad. But then we look at purple, 102 dB. Where the heck is purple on this graph? Like where? Oh, hey, you're way down here. This means because I cut this graph off at 3, that means that the purple is like way down here below 3 dB. So that's a good sign that this speaker is using a limiter, which means that as you turn the volume up and up, it's not compressed thermally, like the speaker's could probably do more, but the electronics are saying, nope, we're not going to do anymore. And it's most likely to keep people from blowing the speakers and having to send them back, and JBL paying for repairs and stuff like that. And realistically, this is a near field monitor. It's intended to be a near field monitor. So you're not going to be listening to these speakers at 102 dB at, a meter away, especially when you've got a pair, because then that adds 9 dB. So you get 6 dB from, the double a speaker, double a power, that's 6 dB. And then you get another 3 dB or so of gain from the room. So that 102 dB at 1 meter is actually 111 dB at 1 meter. If you're monitoring your music and mixing at that kind of volume, I probably don't want to listen to anything you produce, because it probably sounds like garbage, for real. Long-term compression tests. So this is where I sweep the speaker, measure its output, play it with multi-tone stimulus, which is kind of like pink noise, if you want to think about it like that. Very, very highly dense with a crest factor of 12 dB. So it can play it, a certain volume and reach as much as plus 12 dB from that volume. And then I run a sweep again. Then I play another 2 minutes worth of multi-tone, and then I run a sweep again. So I've got 3 sweeps, and in between each one, I've got the multi-tone stimulus. And the idea is that it's going to heat up the voice coils, possibly throw the resistors out of whack if they're crap, products and crap crossovers. And, I'm not going to get into why I chose these times. I just will say that I think they're valid. I also chose 2 different SPLs to do with 86 dB, and then I run a separate test at 96 dB. So in this test, it's kind of the same thing, where I want to see what the output has changed, from, if I know it's supposed to be 86 dB, is it still 86 dB 2 minutes later, and then another 2 minutes later, 4 minutes later? And if I'm looking at this data right here at 86 dB, yeah, it's hardly changed at all. Now, you got some extra here, which I would consider enhancement. But for the most part, I'm going to say that there's no thermal issues at 86 dB at 1 meter. Then the next step is to do 96 dB at 1 meter, and we see the same result. And you may be asking, do I ever see anything different? Well, I just started doing this testing, but I did run 5 or 6 tests yesterday on 5 or 6 different speakers. And there was 2 really cheap budget monitor speakers that were terrible in this. I mean, way all over the place. So yes, you can see much, much worse. And I would consider this pretty darn good, especially when you talk about, again, 96 dB at 1 meter is pretty loud, when you're talking near field mixing. And then in-room measurements, the prediction, I need to get rid of this, but I'm not going to do that anytime soon. The prediction lines up with what I actually measured. So the prediction is in the black, and what I actually measured is in this teal. And the prediction lines up above about 600 hertz, and that's to be expected. Below that, you've got a bunch of room issues. Floor and ceiling bounce are probably eating me up alive right here. So if I move to the near field, this would be smoothed out some. And the closer I get to the speaker, the more it matches the prediction in the lower frequencies. And also, the more I move in the near field, the more this high frequency picks up. So that's kind of worth noting as well. This measurement was taken, 3 meters or something like that away? 4 meters. 4 meters. Okay. Okay. Parting random thoughts. So this is me getting close to wrapping this thing up. If you want to see what I listen to when I do my testing, I have a Spotify playlist, and you are more than welcome to check that out. Listening, I vary between 80 to 95 dB at 1 meter to 4 meters, just kind of varied all over the place. And I do that for a number of reasons. Logic indicates that, you want to see what a speaker is capable of at low and high volumes. And, when you mitigate more of the room interaction, so you get near field versus when you get far field, and some of that may be room based. So its output is limited by the internal DSP. And I say it happens somewhere between 96 and 102 dB. So if you were to take the 96 dB and say that you were, what do I got here? 105 dB at 1 meter and 93 dB at 4 meters for a pair of speakers in a room. So that's still quite good. Even though it didn't hit 102 dB without limiting, it still gets pretty darn loud in a room. I said a bit rumbly in the mid-bass region. That's some Winnie the Pooh talk. We'll get to that in a second. Depeche Mode, nice punchy bass, but sounds very slightly rumbly in the 100 to 150 hertz region. And one thing I'll note too, when I do all my subjective testing, the first thing I do before I do anything is I listen subjectively. I don't test objectively any of these speakers. I'll always listen to the speakers first. I take notes, I write them on my phone. Joe knows what I'm talking about. Shout out to Joe and Tail. He knows what I'm talking about. And the reason I do that is because if I see this data before I listen, it's going to be in the back of my mind. Even though I would love to believe that I would be totally unbiased by the data, I know better. I know me. I know that something would probably trigger in my mind. So I don't look at the data. And I do a few rounds. I'll listen to the speaker. I'll make my notes. I may come back to the speaker a couple days later to try to, get a different feel for it because I don't want, a mood or anything like that to affect it. And I don't want to tire, and I want to make sure I exhausted a bunch of different music because some music might just hit the wrong issue. And if I'm talking about a speaker that I'm going to own for a long time, I want to make sure it's a good speaker. So yeah, so I mentioned that. Now I'll keep going. 24 Karat Magic by Bruno Mars. I said the bass is punchy but not really full, and I assumed that there was a steep roll off below the 50-60 hertz region, and there was. The data showed us that. So okay, you need a subwoofer. Not a big deal there. It's 5-inch midwoofer. Soundstage is actually surprisingly deep, in my opinion. And coming from the KEF and the Kali Ion 5s that I tested, both of those are concentric drive units. And I was really impressed by how deep the soundstage is with the right recording. And most speakers don't do that unless it's one of those type of speakers. It seems to be, at least. And maybe that's totally psychoacoustic, but just take it for what it's worth. But yeah, these speakers were surprisingly deep. Soundstage width is also quite nice, and I attribute that to the radiation pattern being extended to about plus or minus 70 degrees. Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer sounds a little bit forward. Setting the high frequency treble knob thing to negative 2 dB helps with that. And then I mentioned the John Mayer's Free Falling, where it kind of jumps out, and I did use an RTA app to measure to see where that was, and sure enough, it was in the 1.6 to 1.8 kilohertz region. And I've got that on my phone, but I can't find my phone. But anyway, yeah, so that shows up in the frequency response. So all the things that I heard show up in the frequency response. For those of you who say data doesn't matter, you're looking at the wrong stuff or you're taking the wrong measurements. I'm telling you. The mid bass does some things I did not like at all. Let's talk about the mid bass. The mid bass, I hated the mid bass. The mid bass would be the reason I would not buy these speakers. And I'm still going to throw an affiliate link in here because some of you may say, look, dude, I've got $300 and that is absolutely it. So I will take that. I'm okay with that. I can deal with it. But just letting you know how I honestly feel. There were multiple songs where the song would hit the right note. For example, Howard Jones's Everlasting Love has a 4-chord progression going in order from 225, 180, 150, and down to 60 hertz ballpark. And in the near field, so I got a 1 foot away to mitigate the room because I heard the issue and I wanted to make sure it wasn't the room. So I got right next to the speaker. That first note at 225 sounded very, very thin. And I know from previous experience, as well as from Audacity, that those 4 notes are supposed to be roughly the same in level and fullness as well. And it wasn't. Well, it turns out at 225, there's a resonance there. There's some sort of resonance going on and it shows up in the data, but you kind of have to go and look for it quite intently. But without having heard that, I don't know that I would have realized the data would show me that. I think that's very interesting. A similar story for Tears for Fears, where it goes dun 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 dun. When it does that dun dun at about the 1 minute mark, man, it lit up. The speaker is like dun dun, and I was like, oh, stop, because it's my favorite song, and it was ruining it. So then I went on to Wrapped Around Your Finger by the Sting and the Police, or just the Police. A great, great song with great mid bass guitar at the beginning. There's a glaring sound that I heard that I could not stand. So again, I'm assuming a lot of these issues are due to enclosure resonance of some sort. I don't know the root cause, but it's some sort of enclosure resonance. It was not the room, and it did show up in the anechoic data. Okay, and then here's my note. I understand that these are really the darlings of the budget monitor scene. For the price, you get a lot of good. There's some good selections here. Personally speaking, though, I would want a monitor speaker to have a more neutral on-axis response. And there was a lot of things about these speakers that bugged me, that if I were a mixing engineer, maybe if I didn't know better, then it would be okay. But once I heard some of those issues, I couldn't get past them. And I think that it could be an issue if you're trying to, let's say, you hear that mid-bass resonance and you've got EQ, so you EQ that down in your mix. Well, that means that everybody who's listening to your music, even if they're listening to it on a great system, it's going to sound, kind of down and level where it shouldn't. And that's because you had a speaker that wasn't quite up to par or up to the task of, mixing. But again, we got to talk about budget. We got to talk about the price, $300. So how do I feel about overall price? I think it's fine. I mean, it's a good speaker. Is it the greatest thing ever? I don't know. I would really say that if you could save up money, those Kali Ion 5s that I tested were incredible, but they're a bigger speaker and they're a little over double the price. When I get to testing more, budget friendly monitors, maybe I'll have a better feel of what's out there. And it may turn out that, these are the best you can do at $300. That may very well be the case. But as it sits right now, I will have to wait until I get some more experience with other monitors to tell you for sure that, yeah, these are a no-brainer. Go buy them. Let's see here. Oh, and as with anything else, I would suggest purchasing from a retailer who allows you a good return policy, because if you don't like them, then you don't want to be stuck with the speaker. And in that case, if you want to purchase some from B&H Photo, I have shamelessly provided an affiliate link here because, again, nobody's paying me for this stuff. I'm paying myself. YouTube, I think I get like a few bucks a day. It sucks. So anything that I can help make off an affiliate link, that's the route I'm going to go. So I'm going to stop this here. Let me see. Stop sharing. Stop sharing. Let me move this back over here. And now I will say, I'm going to go through y'all's comments. I know there's a lot of talk going on. Hopefully I didn't miss anything important. And if I see any questions, then I will ask them. Give me a second. I get a water break. Can y'all hear my dog? I got a German Shepherd. She's a puppy. She's like 8 weeks old. Oh, God, no, she's older than that. She may be 4 months old at this point. I don't know. She's a puppy. I got her in a crate right now because she's insane. If I leave her out by herself, she'll eat everything in the house. And she is whining like crazy. So hopefully nobody can hear her. Okay. Isn't Kali made by an ex-engineer? Show on stream. Dun, da, 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 da. Let's see here. Why is it not showing on stream? I quit life. There we go. All right, cool. Yeah, somebody asked if Kali was made by, yes. Yeah, Charles Sprinkle. I think Joe, yes, there it is. Bogdan, yes, Charles Sprinkle from Kali used to be at JBL. And I believe other people went over to Kali as well from JBL. Let's see here. Homeboy, MZKM 306 and 308 have a level treble. It's like JBL forgot to account for a 5-inch woofer having. Yeah, no, I don't get that. I mean, to me, with a monitor speaker, why would you have a shelved up, high frequency? Why would you do anything other than flat on axis for a monitor? I just don't get it. Another thing, why would you put a port on the back? I mean, most people monitoring, especially, let's be real, if you're shopping for $300 monitors, more than likely it's going to be computer monitors, and you're going to be monitoring with them like on a desktop near a wall, most likely. Why would you put a port on the back? I don't understand why companies, not just JBL, why would anybody do that? Okay. All right. I'm gonna keep going. I don't want to pick on them too hard here. And yeah, it would be an easy fix, by the way. KRKs. Yeah, somebody wants to send in some KRKs. That would be cool. So for those of you who don't know, I'm working with, I guess, B&H. So I reached out to them to try to get an affiliate account set up to where when I review stuff that they happen to sell, then I could throw up an affiliate account in lieu of, or not in lieu, but in addition to my Amazon affiliate account. And then they emailed me back and said, hey, if you got any questions, let me know. And I said, oh, I got questions. So I contacted them, and long story short, they were willing to work out a deal with me where anything that I want that they sell, they would take care of shipping and back, to me and back up to a certain dollar amount, send me anything that they sell and I would review it. And I don't have to say it's great and I don't have to say it's bad. I mean, it truly, whatever I want to say, just like I've done here today, it's fully honest, complete transparency here. And all I've got to do in return is just provide an affiliate link. And that's another reason why, if you guys are buying stuff and I throw an affiliate link, if you buy it through that helps me, because it shows them that, oh yeah, this Erin dude is helping drive some traffic, and I'm not going to shill for anybody. I'm telling you flat out, I wouldn't buy the speaker if it were me. I'm still going to provide you the link. But that's, that helps me get other stuff because they sell KRKs and they got some that I'm interested in that I'm hoping maybe I can test when they get them back in stock. So let's get out of that. Why does this I can't understand this thing. Clips takes the crown for port resonance. Yeah, they seem to, man, unfortunately. I'm going through my notes here. Compression. There's definitely a limiter on the JBL. Okay, and it's actually surprisingly good. Yeah, no, I agree. It actually, and the thing I like about it, unlike the clips that I recently tested, and then I went back and retested. No, I didn't retest the Numis. I tested those as well. Their limiters are just bass limiters, and I'm like, man, that sucks. Like, don't change the frequency response profile just so I can turn it up. If I'm turning it up too loud going past the speaker's output capabilities, then just make that across the board, or just make it up so it doesn't make it so it doesn't turn up any louder than some value, period. But don't put a bass limiter on there or a stupid high. Like one of these speakers I tested, it may have been the clips, put a limiter on it to where you reach a certain threshold. Instead of chopping the bass or chopping the high frequency or just chopping all of it, it chopped both the bass and the high frequency, and you were left with like 1K. I'm like, what the heck? It doesn't make much sense for Erin to take on dozens of studio monitors in for review as he largely assesses again as an intended use case, far field living room. No, I don't. If you watch this review, you will see that I talked about listening near field. I listened to multiple positions, and I'm kind of giving you a little bit of everything because not just are people using these near field, people are using these far field, and people have asked numerous times across the internet, hey, can I listen to JBL 305Ps or JBL 305 8Ps for a home theater? So people use them for everything. So if it's a near field monitor, I'm going to listen to it at least in that way. But if it's not meant as a near field, then I'm probably not going to listen to it in the near field unless I'm trying to make sure that I'm not hearing a room issue. So while I appreciate your reply, I will say that you are wrong. Some of the best in the business use this speaker, and you can find out on my page, JBL Twitter Bro, with the biggest. Well, let's just put it this way: if they're the best in the business, bro, and they're the biggest artists and best selling, then why aren't they using something better? I don't know. Yes, I would agree. I would agree. I'm thinking of getting 308s for a lounge room. See, people want to get near field speakers for uses other than just near field. And that's kind of why I like to do a little bit of everything when I'm trying to review speakers to kind of give everybody an idea of how it's going to react in their particular situation. Studio monitor should measure flat in listening window, and the predicted in-room response will be flat with a downward slope. So Erin's measurements are valid near and far field. Again, that is correct. At that point, yeah, if you have a bedroom, home theater, something smallish room under 150, yeah, no, I would agree. If you're operating on a budget and you want an active speaker because you don't want to go through the trouble of buying an AVR or something like that, I mean, you could just get some RCA to XLR adapters probably and run them out to these speakers. That wouldn't be ideal, but it would work. Yeah, I mean, you could do it that way. But again, I'm going back to, if I'm looking for studio monitoring, I'm looking for a better overall response. I found sound of 305 was definitely bright in my room. I think we probably understand why. It looks like the high frequency is definitely lifted. Point them no end. Yeah, I would agree. That's probably accurate. Yeah. It's a freaking bargain. If you want to DIY. Yeah, no, you can definitely spend a whole lot of money on a tweeter if you wanted to. We'll love you to try HS5. Yeah, I'd be interested to test the HS5 as well. Let's see. Absolutely. There's a lot of interesting, and there's a lot of science that if you take the time to go and look into some people talking about those monitors and how music was mixed back in the day with those, there's a lot of studies done on those. It's really quite interesting. Thanks. Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Appreciate you watching. Thank you. Okay, can someone correct me if I'm wrong? It's kind of hard to tell on the graph, but how high is the shelf on the top end above 1K? There's that peak at 1K, but is it 4? If you're talking about just that resonance, that's around like 3 dB versus like the mean. But if you're talking about the high frequency shelf itself above 2K or so, then that's about 1.5 dB, give or take, relative to the mean. Let's see. I know where my tinnitus. Talking about the dog. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Chris, dude, thank you so much, man. That means so much. I seriously, seriously, truly appreciate that, dude. That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's see. David Fuller, I mentioned this on ASR, but about 95% of those resonance you're hearing at the front baffle being incredibly light and flexible plastic. You may be right. Yeah, man, you may be right. And there's just no way for me to know, but I don't see any reason why not. I like ports on the back, lots of issues. Yeah, no, well, there's lots of issues. Quantify that statement with there's lots of issues with front ports that Amir's reviews have shown. There's a lot of issues with ports, period, that Amir's reviews and even mine have shown. It's just there's a lot of speakers with very bad port designs. And when you have those, you either get if it's a front port, most likely it's going to show up as an on axis or all axes dip in response. And if it's a rear port, then it's going to show up as a boost. Most of the time, that's what I've noticed. Tom Barnaby, $5, dude. Thank you. I'd hug you. I'd hug you. Come over. I'll hug you. I appreciate that for real. Agreed about better avoid leakage about leakage. Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying that everybody has to do that, but I'm just thinking like most people are going to put them near a wall. So I would prefer to have a front port in that case because then you're not stuffed with either that or stuff the ports. I don't know. Personally speaking, and I'll get off on a tangent here, but I don't really know why. I mean, I know why, but I wish manufacturers just wouldn't even bother making ported bookshelf speakers. I know why they do it, and some of it certainly has to do with consumer expectations. So a consumer's going to say, "Oh, that's ported, man. I had subwoofers ported in my car back in the day, and they get loud." But most of the time, it's to a fault. It winds up being peaky response in the low end, and then you get port resonance. So I just wish they would just stop. That's all I'll say about that. Limiter that cuts signal will make customers angry. Someone that is concerned about frequency response and high volume knows better as you do and will use the monitor at optimal levels. Yes, I agree. It's to me though, it's why just cut the base? You know, I don't know. I mean, I certainly know what you're saying, but it's just like, come on, man. Why y'all doing this to me? More clear than the water. You don't hear for no one, and this is not about you. I'm not sure what that means. But anyway, Jose Santiago Ortiz, I appreciate your comment, buddy. Way I see it, I think most of these small 2A, yeah, dude. I didn't even see you saying that, but yes, 100%. Just use a subwoofer with a sealed speaker and call it a day. I know not everybody can afford it, but realistically, that's what I would like to see. Some people did mods to reduce resonances in the first. Yeah, to be. Hey, if you got a link for that, throw it down in this video when we're done or now or whatever. I would be curious to see kind of what mods they did for that. I'm curious, like because if they did certain mods, that may give you a hint to what the issue was. If they were able to resolve it with a modification, like if they modified the crossover network, then that's maybe not an enclosure thing. But if they modify the enclosure, then it's probably an enclosure thing, right? So just something to think about. Very confused. Heard the KRK sounds better. I honestly have no idea. I don't have any experience with either of these speakers, and I'm not even sure what the responses look like either. So, yeah, I just can't help you there, man. I'm sorry. Power speakers in professional studios. Yeah, dude, but you're saying professional studios. How many professional studios, serious professional, think about it, are using $300 JBL studio monitors in a truly professional studio? Because all the ones that I know, the literal people that I know who are engineers and musicians, they don't use these speakers, man. They don't. They use ATC, they use Don, they have them on a console. I know one guy who uses Cali. I know two people and maybe a third coming soon who use Dutch and Dutch HC. And the reason I know them is because they contacted me directly after I reviewed them and told me that they're using them for them. So yeah, I don't know personally anybody who's using these speakers, and I'd be surprised if anybody were in a true professional. I'm talking like high dollar setup. Da, 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 da. Dave Fuller. I don't know. Yeah, Dave Fuller. Okay, sorry. And if I've missed anybody, I appreciate that. I review for honestly, dude. I don't know who you are. I just know your screen name. I'm bad with names though, so that's not like me dissing you. I just don't. I'm terrible with names, so I really don't know who you are. So that doesn't carry a lot of weight with me at this very moment. Professional studio, right? Professional. No, no, no. I need your advice. My neighbor likes to fart into a mic and amplify that fart through the wall. Oh, that's a tough one. Your neighbor likes to fart into a mic and amplify that through the wall. Does he have like one of those tactile transducers? How is he amplifying it through the wall? Um, or do you mean like he's playing the speaker through the wall? I guess you could get like Apple AirPods and just figure out whatever fart frequency is and just tune it to that. Maybe come up with something along those lines and just play like the antitone, and you'll be all right. The fart is far field. Fart field, I think is what you mean. As long as the fart is fart field, right? Oh, hey, dude, I appreciate that. And that's in British pounds. And maybe next year, I'm hoping to maybe be able to take a trip over to the UK and do some sightseeing and maybe even swing by the KEF facility. So I'm going to keep this. I'm not even going to have this converted to USD. I'm gonna keep this in GBP, and I'm gonna rock it when I get there. So seriously, dude, I appreciate that. That's awesome, man. I'm gonna try to go back through here and make sure I didn't miss anybody. Tim Perry, thank you, man. I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the work that you do for the Daily Hi-Fi. You seriously do a great job, truly. I wish I could get you to edit my videos because Lord knows I hate doing it. Let's see. Hey, dude, I appreciate that. That's awesome, and that dollar amount is an interesting number too. But I do appreciate that for real, man. That's really cool. You guys, seriously, that's awesome. I really do appreciate it. Joe and Tail, we need to Wharfdale the Clippers. Jeez Louise. We need to Clipple the Wharfdales. I was trying to say it backwards on purpose, and then I just made it even worse. How much the super chat fee goes to the creator? All right. I've only done this one other time, and I want to say it was like 70%. So YouTube, dude, YouTube takes their money or takes people's money, but I appreciate it because it is absolutely better than nothing. So I appreciate it. Youth man, what up, Michael? I appreciate the stop by, dude. I appreciate it, dude. You're awesome. Take care and enjoy your website. I'm running KEF LS2 is way more even based. Yes, absolutely. And at one point, what I want to do is a video talking about, multi-base distribution in a room. And it's something that like numerous other people have covered, but it's something that I would like to do, and provide some graphics on, just kind of a general rule of thumb, some ideas, maybe some new ideas on ways you can make it a little bit easier as far as locating the placement of the subwoofer in your room. But we'll see, if I can work something like that out, that would be pretty awesome. No, actually, well, not for surround. Youth man, he's running, gosh, is it JTR speakers now? He was running the Klipschel Scala. So Michael, if you're here, you can let them know what you're running now, unless you already have and I just missed it. Check out the measurements on ASR. You'll see how the HS. That's right. That's right. Amir did measure the HS. Was it the HS5s though? And are those the exact same ones that everybody monitored on like back in the 70s, or is it a different, like a tweak on the design now? I'm unsure. Yes. So here's the deal. When I was making that video, give me 1 second. I'm gonna get some water real fast. When I was doing that chat with Earl, I was in my head the whole time, like straight up in my head the whole time. And I was like, I'm talking too much or I'm sounding stupid. Because I don't know. I was just, you don't want to mess up when you're talking to your hero, right? And I didn't want to watch it back, but I wound up having to watch it back because I wanted to go through and make timestamps. And I was like, I don't sound as terrible as I did. But in that watch back, I was like, holy crap, like some of the stuff that he was saying didn't quite register to me at the time because it was almost like an out of body experience that I was having. And I'm dead serious. It was really funny, thinking about it and like telling other people how I felt about it. But, it's Earl Geddes, dude. I was talking to the man. So having watched it on the watch back, yes, I agree, man. There's just so much knowledge bombs that he was dropping left and right. Jose, I appreciate that. And I'm glad people enjoyed it and, got something out of it because I know I certainly did. How come clip sub sounds deep? I have no idea, but I'm surprised. I am surprised. And here's the thing, when you say deeper, so that's what she said. When you're talking about deeper, I mean, is it really deeper bass, like sub 30 hertz, or is it just that there's more, in the 50 hertz region, more rumble effect? Because if it's the latter, then they probably just have, a high Q enclosure and it has a knee, like a roll off around the 50 or 40 hertz region. That would be my guess. Otherwise, I got nothing, dude. No, those are NS. That's what I thought. Yeah, the NS10s, not NS5. Okay. I would love to test those if somebody hasn't already, but I would think at this point somebody has. Although nobody ever tested the Bose 901s. And that's what pushed me to test them last summer because I really was curious, what the responses look like. But the fact that nobody had tested it to that point was interesting to me. So having the ability to test those is really neat. So maybe nobody's tested the Yamaha NS10s yet. And if they haven't, then that would be kind of neat if I could somehow get my hands on a set that was still good too, because they're old speakers and they could have fallen apart by this point. Yeah, man, that's a great video. I highly encourage you to watch it. Sounds more like it's in the 30 hertz region. Well, and that may be without, I would suggest if you're really curious to go and try to measure the response in your room. I mean, maybe it's just the way the speaker loads against the wall differently. Assuming that they're in the exact same place, I don't know why the clips would perform better than the PB4000 because the PB4000, I'm assuming, will play crazy low, but I don't know. And it could also just be that, you have a peak there if there's a modal thing going on. I got a chance to talk with, is it Vakes? I can't pronounce his last name. I want to say it's Vokes, but I feel like it's pronounced Vakes. And yes, I was fanboying for sure, dude. It was awesome. Maybe I can have him back on at some point. Joe, appreciate you dropping by, man. For real, it means a lot getting your support. So thanks for hanging around with me and having my back. What's up with the square room? My garage 24. It's my man cave. That's a pretty nice man cave, dude. Really, hey man, MRPC, thank you. I really appreciate the donation. That means a lot, dude. For real, appreciate that. What is I'm interested in your main speakers. Okay, so my home theater is not, and I've said this before, my home theater is not what I would consider a reference. The home theater is kind of it's a mix between high output but also nostalgia. So here's the deal: about 5 or 6 years ago, whenever it was that I got the gear, I got it from a guy who is the sound man for a church, and the church bought out a Carmike cinema in town. The cinema that I used to go and watch movies with my dad on Sundays, and then we would go play putt-putt golf, and then we would go get ice cream. That was like a Sunday thing. Every other Sunday or so, my dad would take me to do that, and I have great nostalgic memories of doing that with my old man. So when I saw this stuff on, was it Craigslist? I was like, oh, that's crazy. So I went, and the guy had a shelter, like a shed thing, a storage shelter that he had rented out, and he was trying to get rid of everything. I mean, he had, I'm not kidding, like hundreds of speakers in this thing. So I got some JBL 15s with the cabinets, and I took the cabinets home and I threw away the cabinets because they were old and crappy. So I saved the 15s and I DIY'd some 4 cubic foot enclosures tuned to, I think, 50 or 60 something hertz. So they're big, giant mid basses. And then I've got them paired to a 2-inch compression driver JBL 2446J. And I can't remember the horn throat. Is it a 2330A or 8020? I can't remember, but it's big horn. That's crossed over 500 hertz on the low end. So they're playing from 500 hertz up. And then you're talking about controlled directivity. But they are behind an acoustically transparent screen. And I built a false wall and got them all behind it. And so that's my home theater. That's LCR. That's left, center, right. And then for the surrounds, I think it's 8330As is what they are. And again, those came from the theater. So for me, it's about nostalgia and about being able to rock out. They ran off a bunch of Crown amplifiers with a Denon AVR, an Oppo Blu-ray player. I think it's a 103. And like I said, I wouldn't consider it reference, but for me, it's fun as heck. It gets stupid loud. And I wouldn't consider it reference mainly because the noise floor, the signal to noise ratio on the Crown amps is rather low and mixed with high sensitivity drivers because these are the tweeters, the compression drivers, I think are rated at 118 dB at 1 watt, 1 meter. I mean, it's stupid high. So all you hear is like, if you're, got the music pause or the whatever pause. So I can't listen to music on those because it drives me insane. So my reference system just kind of cycles between whatever I'm listening to at the time or whatever I'm reviewing. It's kind of all over the map. I've still got the Dutch and Dutch 8Cs upstairs. And if I really want, I can just bring them downstairs and plug them in and listen to those. Those will be considered a reference because they are incredible. But yeah, that's the honest answer. No lies. I'm not going to try to impress you with stuff I don't have. That's just the honest answer. Let's see here. Okay. Am I missing anything else in here? Got to run in my system. 6-inch ball. Need it is. Before I go, please measure some. I don't even know what that is, but send them to me. Horror tones. There you go. Awful tones. Okay. Take the photo with SD overestimated. The SD for driver is often overestimated. Absolutely. Yes. A lot of times, like a 6-inch driver, somebody will call a 6-inch driver, and it's in terms of actual surface diameter, like effective diameter. So from half surround to half surround, it's more like a 5 or something like that. Generally speaking, if you're trying to calculate actual surface area, then to get the diameter, I just take like 0.8 of whatever they say the outer diameter is. If I don't have the means to go and measure it or something like that, if somebody says I've got a 6-inch woofer, I just go ahead and say 0.8 times that, and then that kind of gets me in the ballpark. And usually it's close. But I really only have to do that when I'm trying to calculate what the beaming frequency is going to be. And if you're talking, a few hundred hertz, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, I would agree. My stream is so clear. Good. I've actually just ordered a new mic and I'm playing around with this, and I don't know if I like it or not, but it's better than having. It'll be interesting when I listen to this back if it sounds halfway decent, but normally I had this big stupid thing here and I just don't like it. So I'm trying this like boom mic thing and hopefully it's okay. But I'll find out later. No Revel. I'm not sure what that is in relation to. So let's see here. Okay. I think, unless anybody has any questions about this review in particular or something like that, then I'm probably going to go ahead and cut it off because I think I'm just wasting a lot of people's time at this point. So, oh, sorry, Chris. No Revel in my system. So here's the deal. My living room, I can't have speakers in there. I mean, I can do it temporarily while I'm auditioning speakers or things like that, reviewing, and that's fine. But for them to be full time, I've got 2 puppies and they fight all the time, and I just wouldn't trust them to not knock something over. And it's just a high traffic area. So I don't really have anything in my living room for that reason. I just have TV. I don't even have a sound bar. Hell, whatever. For my upstairs theater room, I would have to gut like the entire wall and completely rebuild it for me to put anything in there other than what's already in there, because the wall is built around the speakers. And yeah, that's a chore. It took me about a week to do that, and I don't ever want to have to do that again. What's up? Though Fury is an incredible movie. I absolutely love that movie. Audio is tight. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate the heads up. I found that link for the resonance issue. I'll drop it in the ASR. Hey, appreciate that, man. That'll be good to have. I do appreciate that. You said that. Sorry. Yes. Have I ever hurt my ears with subwoofer listening? Yeah. I mean, maybe not just subwoofer listening, but like listening at really high volume for an extended period of time. Yeah. But as I've gotten older, I've kind of quit doing that. I mean, I still want to get on the throttle a lot, but I turn it down on purpose so I don't, cause long-term damage. And I've actually only been to a few rock concerts, so I don't really have to worry about that. Michael, peace, dude. Thanks for showing up and hanging out. And I think I'm going to be with Michael on this one too. I'm last call. If anybody's got any specific questions about this review, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. You can always ask in the comment section below. And if you're on ASR, you can ask there, and I will do my best to answer in the best fashion that I can, because I certainly don't know everything. This is a group effort where I post the data, I give you my thoughts on the data, and if somebody else comes along and has other thoughts, then they're free to throw them out there. Active versus passive. Active every time if I can. That one's pretty easy, but it's not cheap. So active every time if I can. Donald, hey man, I appreciate that, dude. Like I said, I'm doing what I can, and that's all anybody can do these days, Papa Boy Williams, thanks, sir. I appreciate I appreciate the subscribe. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Appreciate it. Okie dokie. All right, fellas. Well, that's going to do it for me because my dog is straight up going insane. She's probably peed in her own crate at this point. Not to be gross, but #life. So I will talk to you all later. And again, I appreciate you joining in and watching, and just helping me overall share this information. It's definitely fun. And if you guys, if the comments are good, let me know. Give me a thumbs up. Because doing this is so much easier than me trying to edit a full-on video. And if this is something you guys, would like to see more of, and you don't mind not seeing the edited ones, then I will do this because this is so much easier. It saves me so much. I did this, less than an hour or less than an hour and a half. It would take me half a day to edit a video, and it wouldn't even be near as good as something like Michael or Joe or Chana can produce, and I'm shouting them out because they were in here or are in here now. So yeah, let me know. And if you're still watching this after the live stream and you made it this far, you're awesome. I appreciate that. And with that said, thanks everybody. And I will talk to you guys later. Chris, MQA. No, one day I'm going to do a video about not MQA, but high res, but not today, because that's a totally different animal. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. And again, I really do appreciate you watching. Y'all take care. This is the part where I say peace and I hit the end string. Peace.